Ever since H.G. Wells wrote The Time Machine in 1895, everyone has fantasized about what they would do if they could travel to the past or the future. This concept has been explored in Bill and Ted, Groundhog Day, and of course their spiritual and thematic equal, The Terminator. But the most celebrated time travel movie has got to be Back to the Future. The premise is genius. What if you went back in time and stopped your own parents from meeting, meaning you were never born? Sub-question, what would happen if you just smashed your own mother? But amazing as Back to the Future is, the behind-the-scenes dramas, references to other films, sneaky cameos, and little Easter eggs are just as fascinating as the film itself. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 20 things you somehow missed in Back to the Future. Number 20, the head producer hated the title. Bob Gale came up with the idea for Back to the Future after seeing an old yearbook photo of his father and wondering if they would have been friends if they went to school together. Along with director Robert Zemeckis, they agreed Back to the Future would be a great title. However, Universal Pictures head producer Sidney Sheinberg did not. He sent a note to Steven Spielberg telling him to change the title to Spaceman from Pluto. Now, Spielberg knew it wasn't really a good idea to tell the most powerful man in Universal Pictures that his title sucked, so he just pretended that he must have concocted it as a joke. Sheinberg was too embarrassed to correct him and let the name be. But look closely though, as when the family on the farm look at the DeLorean, the son shows his father a comic entitled Space Zombies from Pluto. Number 19, an orgy. When Marty McFly first skates into town, there is a cinema in the background which is advertising the film Orgy American Style. That's not a joke though, as Orgy American Style is a real Rudy film, and one of its stars, George Buck Flower, is in Back to the Future. In the 1955 timeline, Buck's character Red Thomas has posters plastered all over the city to announce his candidacy for the mayor's office. In the 1985 timeline, he appears as the bum who calls Marty a crazy drunk driver when he crashes the DeLorean. Number 18, the name of the mall changes. Doc reveals his time machine to Marty outside the Twin Pines Mall. After Doc is gunned down by terrorists, Marty uses the DeLorean to escape the criminals and accidentally goes back in time. He then decides to return a couple of minutes earlier so he can stop Doc from suffering his grisly fate. Only this time, the sign says Lone Pine Mall. That's because when Marty drove out of the farm in 1955, he crashed through one of two trees. After he does this, the farmer screams, "My pine!" You see, Marty, the smallest alterations in the past can cause changes in the future that you can never imagine. Number 17, Mr. Peabody and Sherman. There are many iconic stories where time travel is integral to the plot. Primer, Avengers Endgame, X-Men Days of Future Past, and of course, Mr. Peabody and Sherman from the adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Friends. In Peabody's Improbable History, a super intelligent dog called Hector Peabody traveled through time with a young boy called Sherman to teach him about history. Because the show was so popular, Robert Zemeckis knew he had to reference these characters in some way. When Marty travels to 1955, he crashes into a farmer's barn. The family mistake him for an alien and try to shoot him. As Marty drives away, the farmer tries to blast the DeLorean but indirectly hits the postbox, which has the name Peabody written on it. And as an extra little nod, the farmer's son is credited as Sherman. Number 16, the first scene tells you how the movie is going to end. After Marty uses the DeLorean to travel to 1955, he tracks down Doc to find a way to return to his timeline. Doc believes the only power source that could allow the DeLorean to time travel is a bolt of lightning. Luckily, Marty knows the exact day and time the town's clock tower will be struck by lightning. Thus, Doc climbs the clock tower and iconically recreates an already famous moment from 1923 comedy Safety Last, where silent era star Harry Lloyd, no relation, performed the same dangling stunt. But in the opening credits, the camera moves around Doc's office showcasing his array of clocks. On one of the tables, there is a miniature of the clock face from Safety Last with Harold Lloyd, cleverly mirroring the very end of the film. Number 15, redubbing dialogue. It is well documented that Crispin Glover didn't have a good relationship with the film's director, which led to him being recast in the sequels. But there is one thing you can't take away from Glover: with his nervous energy, he was born to play Marty's wimpy father, George McFly. But the thing is, Glover was too nervous and stuttered through most of his lines. He got so worked up before shooting one scene he lost his voice, forcing him to mime his dialogue and dub it in later. Oh, and while we're on the subject of dubbing, the jet engine used to create the storm that stops Doc hearing Marty really did stop Doc from hearing Marty. It was so loud they had to dub their lines back in afterwards. Number 14, dialogue was altered after 9/11. After the tragic attack on the World Trade Center, many programs on television were altered to remove any mention of terrorism. Now, in Back to the Future, Libyan terrorists give Doc a batch of plutonium under the impression he was going to build them a nuclear bomb. Realizing he's double-crossed them, they just shoot him dead instead. When Marty travels to 1955, he writes a letter to Doc, which informs him he will be killed in 1985. When Doc rips up the letter, Marty shouts out, "You'll be shot by terrorists!" When the film was aired after the 9/11 attacks, the scene was edited so Marty just cries out, "You'll be shot!" Anytime the letter is shown on screen, the words "by terrorists" are digitally removed. Number 13, Doc bribes a cop. As Doc is setting up the power cables at the clock tower, a nosy cop appears from behind, looking suspiciously at the DeLorean. When Doc says he's conducting a weather experiment, the police officer requests to see a permit. As Doc shows him this air quotes permit, the shot cuts to Marty. A deleted scene reveals that Doc made the copper stay quiet about his little experiment by bribing him, but why would you cut that? Well, because while that's going on, Marty starts worrying that going on a date with his mother might turn him gay. Unsurprisingly, after filming, the director realised this was a very weird thing to say, and B, just a very weird thing to say, so he hacked it out. Number 12, Biff's lackeys. It's common knowledge that a young Elijah Wood appears for a few seconds in Back to the Future Part 2. Look, there he is, taking absolutely nothing to Isengard or something. But Biff's flunkies are equally as interesting, because while the actors who played Skinhead and 3D went on to have minor success in the acting world, the actor who plays Match is Billy Zane. Yep, the guy from Twin Peaks, from Titanic, from Zoolander, from The Phantom, and Going Out with Kelly Brook. Number 11, Doc's entrance makes no sense. As Marty arrives at the mall to meet Doc, the DeLorean is unveiled to him and the audience for the first time. As the time machine reverses out of the van, the automobile's doors open vertically, revealing the driver and inventor, Dr. Emmett Brown. There's just one teeny weeny itty bitty little problem with this scene though. It doesn't make any sense. How did Doc get inside the DeLorean if the vehicle could barely fit in the back of the van? You would have to roll it in, then drive to where you were going, then roll it back out, get in, drive back into the van, then reverse it out when you wanted to make your entrance. Which, I mean, yeah, sure, he could have done that, but he doesn't even realise Marty's there, so plot hole slightly. Number 10, Ronald Reagan, the actor? When Marty arrives in 1955, he has to convince Doc he has travelled from the future. Naturally, Doc challenges Marty's story and asks him who is the US president in 1985. When Marty correctly answers by saying Ronald Reagan, Doc scoffs at this proclamation because, well, at the time, he's just some actor you see in westerns. Speaking of which, when Marty realises he has gone back in time, he looks up at the Essex Theatre and notices it is playing Cattle Queen of Montana, a western released in 1954 starring, you guessed it, Ronald Reagan. Apparently, the producers and writers were worried that Reagan would be upset by these little jabs at his past, but story goes, he absolutely loved them. Number 9, Huey Lewis plays the too damn loud judge. When Marty auditions for the Battle of the Bands, the judge dismisses him for being too darn loud. In case you didn't notice, the judge who says this line is played by the lead singer of the rock band, Huey Lewis and the News. Alright, so long story, one of the most defining soundtracks of the 1980s is the theme song for the 1984 film Ghostbusters, which was played by Ray Parker Jr., but you already knew that. What you didn't know is that Huey Lewis and the News sued Parker, stating that the track was just a rip-off of his song, I Want a New Drug, which came out earlier the same year. Huey was frustrated that his work could be stolen for other projects since it meant studios could theoretically rake in millions while he made absolutely nothing. This revelation inspired him to work on a blockbuster where he hoped to create a new song that would become a classic. For Back to the Future, he devised Back in Time and the band's most iconic song, The Power of Love. This is the song that Marty plays in the audition, hence why he's in the film, and the more you know. Number 8, the film tried and failed to promote Raisins. Did you notice the California Raisins sign in the film? Well, if you didn't, don't worry, most people didn't, and that was apparently a huge problem. The manager of the Californian Raisin Board paid $100,000 for their product to appear in Back to the Future, under the condition it would be a story element. When a scene was shot of Marty eating raisins, the director worried it looked like he was eating a bowl full of dirt, and so cut the scene. Raisins were meant to appear in at least 4 scenes, but in the end, only an advertisement for the product appears one time on a bench. The California Raisin Board was livid since the advertisement could barely be seen, and it was right beside a homeless person who was, as I'm sure you remember, literally being played by a porn star. And even more funny than that, everyone remembers the Burger King shot though, which, to add insult to injury, wasn't even a product placement. Number 7, the DeLorean's top speed. Very short fact this, but ask anyone what speed they associate with this film and they will all categorically say 88 miles per hour. The only problem with this though is that DeLoreans can only get up to 85 miles per hour. Not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, I mean they can't travel through time either, but it did mean that all the speedometers had to be customized on set, so they went up to 95. Number 6, the Stanley Kubrick reference. In Marty's first scene in Back to the Future, he plays a single power cord using an amplifier, which blasts him off his feet. To set up the amplifier, Marty inserts keys into a slot which reads CRM114. This is a nod to visionary director Stanley Kubrick, who used the term CRM114 in 3 of his films. As the registry number of the spaceship in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the name of an encryption device in Dr. Strangelove, and on a bottle label in A Clockwork Orange. The term has appeared in other properties including Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Heroes, and Men in Black 3. This is probably the most obscure in-joke in the entire film, but still I'm sure film fanatics get the reference and still appreciate it. Number 5, why does Hill Valley look so familiar? Originally, the film was going to be shot in the city of Petaluma, California. Realizing it would be too chaotic and expensive if the film suffered any difficulties, which it totally did by the way, the producers decided to shoot Back to the Future in the back lot of Universal Studios. The town where the story takes place, Hill Valley, is actually called Courthouse Square. You probably recognise it as it's appeared in countless television shows and films, including Bruce Almighty, The Incredible Hulk, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Gremlins, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Offspring music video Why Don't You Get a Job, and the very first episode of the classic show The Twilight Zone. Number 4, is that really Van Halen? When George refuses to date Lorraine, Marty breaks into his house pretending to be an alien and plays deafening music to wake him up, as you do. Before Marty plays the song, you can see him place a tape in the recorder which is labelled Edward Van Halen. But because the music played in this scene isn't from any Eddie Van Halen songs, fans wondered if it was actually him who was making the music. And yeah, it was. Eddie Van Halen agreed to play a tune for the scene, but his producer didn't allow him to perform any of his band's music. Also, the tape was meant to be labelled Van Halen, but his producer refused this request since it was the name of the band, which the studio did not have rights for. Instead, the singer said they could use his real name, Edward Van Halen, and he would compose a unique track for the scene. Number 3, Johnny B. Goode. While Marty plays Johnny B. Goode, he emulates as many rock star tropes as possible. Viewers will recognise all of these traits, but it's hard to pinpoint which ones belong to which musician. Thankfully though, I am here and I am brilliant. The duck walk that Marty performs was popularised by Chuck Berry, the creator of the song Johnny B. Goode. At one point he violently taps the guitar string, much like Van Halen. When Marty plays the instrument behind his head, this is an homage to Jimi Hendrix. He kicks the amplifier just like Pete Townsend from The Who, then he finally wriggles around on the ground like Angus Young from AC/DC. Although Michael J. Fox didn't play the guitar in this scene, he was taught how to hold the instrument by musician Paul Hansen, so his performance appeared more natural. Hansen even cameos as one of the members of Marty's band, the Pinheads. Number 2, the Dog-Lorian. When Doc deduces the DeLorean must travel at 88 miles per hour to time travel, he performs a test to see if a living creature can survive travelling through the time stream. He places his dog, Einstein, in the vehicle and then uses a remote control to make the car travel at 88 miles per hour. While shooting this scene, the car is obviously not remote controlled. Trick photography is used to give the illusion the driverless car is moving at great speed while the dog, who is actually called Tiger by the way, is inside. And as you might have guessed, when there is a close-up of the dog in this scene, the car just isn't moving at all. But the director knew this scene was so crucial, they needed at least one shot of the car driving really fast while the dog is clearly visible. So they had a stuntman do it while wearing a dog costume. Yep, that's what that is right there. That is a man dressed as a dog, pretending to be a dog, driving a car. What a film. Number 1, Eric Stoltz is still in the movie. Although Michael J. Fox was offered the role of Marty, he couldn't commit to the part because he was working on the TV series Family Ties. As a result, Eric Stoltz was cast as the lead character. Stoltz worked on the film for 5 weeks but was fired because Robert Zemeckis thought he was too aggressive after he broke Biff's collarbone while shooting a scene. Fox was rehired, but he could only work at night since he was filming Family Ties during the day. When he finished working on the show for the season, Fox then filmed his day scenes for Back to the Future. Naturally, Zemeckis had to reshoot all of the scenes with Marty, but forgot one of them. When Marty punches Biff, you can clearly see Fox swing a punch, but it's Eric Stoltz in the following shot. Most people don't notice, but still, he is there. So there you have it, those are 20 things you missed in Back to the Future, read to you by a man who is now truly wondering what would happen if he got sent 30 years back in the past and somebody asked him who the president was. Let me know what you made of it all in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share and subscribe. In the meantime though, thank you so much for watching. I have of course been Adam Cleary, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.